first pick has been interesting, honestly.
Yeah, but it just shows that they understand what's most important in this matchup. I wonder if LNG here are going to just go for the... Because we have different teams here, right? Some teams prefer the Ashe, some teams go for the Ezreal. Then you have teams like EDG that would take a Kalista when it's left up here. For the side of LNG, past the Aphelios, they played all 3 of those 80 carries the same amount of times.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what's going to come through here. But as you rightly said, Aphelios and Ashe both priorities for both of these teams, but the pools can very much differ beyond that. The Kalista has been played 3 times, as you say, but the Ashe is going to be the priority.
I was going to say, one thing they could have gone for was the Ezreal, and we've seen a lot of these Gallios be paired with, like, no engage. So then we've seen times where the Ezreal can just outrange these Galio comps, but instead they're going to go for the pick composition with the Ashe, and Volibear very much a flex, so I really like that first rotation. WE going towards full aggression, full comfort, and the Galio is paired with some engage.
And I love that we're seeing, you know, as you rightly say, LNG going for a bit of pick to start things off on the other side of the board. Suddenly WE come out and they're like, we're not looking for picks, we are looking for brawls.
And WE says, hey, we don't care about Kalista against Ashe. We don't care about those slows. It doesn't matter for the attack speed. We're just confident that we can execute this style quite well. And actually, we haven't seen Jomung pick up the Kalista even once this split. So, you know, pulling out a bit of something new in a very common matchup now with Twisted Fate picked into the Galio.
Yeah, worth mentioning that Missing has played the set in support even without a Kalista, even though this is kind of the... I guess the premium duo for set. Like, we have seen them play this even without the Kalista, so they're going to be feeling fantastic in that bottom lane. But when we move towards the bans here, Jarvan and Braum taken out.
Yeah, and I like the Jarvan ban coming out from LNG. It's kind of surprising in the sense that that is the pick that XX is known for, and Beishang this split hasn't picked it up that much. He's only played it once as compared to, you know, more last split, but I'd say this shows that maybe LNG do want to keep that Volibear in the jungle role, especially with the Olaf ban. So... LNG now, I would like to just see them go towards the support to keep that flex all the way until last pick. With the Braum banned and it being Iwandi, maybe we just hit something like a Leona.
WE just banned Quinn, which I don't know if you guys know much about top lane matchups, but Quinn is a hard counter to Renekton. Morgan loves Renekton. That ban just screams, hey, we're grabbing Renekton in the next rotation if you don't pick it.
And, I mean, Morgan feels great right now because his 2 most played champions are still left up. He's played Ornn 9 games in Renekton 8. His next most played champion is Mordekaiser at 2. So, but there we go. We see the Ornn highlight now. This is definitely going to be a lock-in for the side of WE. And these 2 compositions already have very clear identities where LNG have gone full pick, right? They have the Global in the Destiny. They have the Enchanted Crystal Arrow. It's very single target CC oriented. For WE, as always, all about these 5v5 team fights.
And it's all about setting the pace early on as well. When you've got this Galio that spikes at level 6 and spikes at 1 item. Ooh. Same with the Kalista. It's all about the early aggression. We could have a set, though.
Yeah, set jungle.
In the jungle. Interesting. Which we don't see this kind of style of jungler out of Beishang.
Exactly, right? This isn't an uncommon pick by any means, but this is the first time Beishang's picking up this split, and it is pretty interesting because Volibear and Set are actually very similar champions in the jungle role. They're both early duelists. They're both very strong since they're bruisers in the early game. They want to look for these invades. Both very strong at dives. Obviously, the Haymaker from the Set, just Volibear with his ultimate. So, going to be interesting to see how WE plays around this one. But the 2v2 in mid-jungle's pretty strong.
It definitely is, with a ton of CC coming out from the side of WE. But Maple, we mentioned it before, already was going to have a big impact in this series. Now with this Twisted Fate pick, he's going to be the real crux of a lot of the plays that will come through from LNG's side. The final pickup here being the Tahm Kench I wanted.
Which makes sense, right? Well, the second they pick the Thresh, it's like, okay, he lands the death sentence, you devour the Ashe, you're all good and dandy. The other thing I like about it is it adds another global to the composition. So if we do get into a 1-3-1 scenario, you not only have Twisted Fate supporting the mid lane with his ultimate, you'll then have the Ashe Tahm Kench supporting the Twisted Fate as well with the Abyssal Voyage.
I like the idea, right? I like the composition we're getting coming out from LNG here, because not only in the 1-3-1 scenario the global's great, but also we just talked about how the fact that WE, they love to play around finding 1 or 2 people out of positioning and forcing a skirmish. Well, when you've got globals galore on the side of LNG, that's going to be much more difficult to pull off.
Exactly. Even just Tahm Kench in isolation, right? You catch someone out, well, guess what? Tahm Kench shows up, he devours him, he walks away. Better luck next time, WE. So I feel like both compositions have a way to win the game, which to me is always the most important thing when we're judging compositions. And it's going to be interesting to see how execution ends up leading the charge because, as you said, we want to see Maple be a catalyst for the side of LNG. And for WE, it's going to be all about the 2v2 in bot lane.
We'll have to see if they can find themselves any opportunities in that 2v2 against a Tahm Kench. It's always difficult to find those kill opportunities, but we're jumping onto the Rift, and this first pick Galio for Teachermart. There's not many teams in any region that are willing to first pick the Galio, but that's just who WE is.
Yep, definitely fits Teachermart's wheelhouse, and it is great that Galio found a way back into the meta, and obviously he's been in the meta for quite a while now, but if we do remember, he fell out of favor when the E-Flash got taken away, and then once...
the W-Flash.
Yeah, W-Flash, I'm sorry. W-Flash got nerfed, but then once Nimbus Cloak got buffed, people just show us, hey, we'll run Unsealed Spellbook, we'll be able to get to the backline quite easily, and people like Teachermart have only benefited.
Yeah, he's loving, obviously, for anyone that's not seen a bunch of WE in the past, Teachermart is notorious for his ults that have a global impact. Things like your Aurelion Soul, things like your Twisted Fate, even Rumble that just wants to push the wave and then roam elsewhere on the map. And Galio has really been kind of the pinnacle of that champion pool. Back in spring, we saw a lot of Pantheon as well, but that's very much fallen out of his pool.
I mean, it seems like they really do that when they get that Pantheon Echo combination, and it is something that's very hard to execute and you really need to snowball on, so I like that they keep it as kind of more of a trump card rather than something they use every game. And
it feels like a playoff pick, right?
Yeah.
It feels like once we get into best of fives, it's like, okay, here's our way to like play this trump card, find ourselves a free win in this best of five, and just get ourselves one step closer to moving on to the bracket.
And again, they always have it. It's always available. They've shown they're willing to pick it 1-2 on red side or 2-3 on blue, so it's not something they're very shy about showing the enemy that they play. And now I expect the early game not to be super action-packed for either side. Both of them are bruiser junglers. They don't have the easiest time getting into the lanes. The great thing is we actually do have a lot of setup, right? We have the taunt coming out from Teachermart, the gold card from Maple. Top side for LNG, you have the W from Renekton, so maybe we see something early on, but it does look like they're just going to end up trading sides and trading scuttles.
I'm really curious, actually, about this jungle matchup. You're talking about them trading sides, and they're going to be able to get a scuttle crab each, but Set versus Volibear, it's not a matchup that I've seen before in the jungle. Like, what is your expectation of how they're going to play out this early game?
If it just comes to a straight 1v1 duel, I would expect XX to win out early on, especially for the fact that he does have the press the attack compared to Phase Rush coming out for Beishong. But it's actually not a matchup we've even seen too much of in the direct jungle role. Of course, both these champions are on the Rift quite often, but
we'll have to see how they're going to be able to make this one work for themselves. A little bit of harass coming down here.
At least for LNG side, I do expect him to just play around this top half of the map early on, and it won't really be until 6 where we see them look for like hard pressure on bot side. So Flandre's already pushed in the wave. He can get a bounce back on Morgan, try to hold that on his side, and then maybe after a recall, we can see XX look for a gank on top lane.
It does feel like both teams are going to be pretty reliant on that level 6 mark, though. I mean, on WE side, obviously, all of those ultimates, really, really impactful teamfight ultimates. As Beishong grabs himself the Scuttlecraft, he's already going to be level 4 here. And on the other side of the board as well, you know, Maple. As soon as you hit level 6 on that Twisted Fate, you want to be moving around the map, trying to set up a place somewhere. And what with the fact that XX has started off with complete control of the top side of the map, when you've got a Renekton in the top lane as well, Morgan seems like a prime target.
Missing, just saying hello, but yeah. An interesting thing now is the fact that with neither side lanes getting that bounce back they just talked about, and both junglers' camps going to come up on those sides of the map, right now I just expect Beishong to potentially look for a gank top and XX to look bot.
We'll see as they're just going to trade sides of the map now. Just keep swap it around as we move through the game.
Just keep full clearing their own junglers, which, again, both compositions are heavily reliant on their level 6s, so not too surprising.
And you mentioned Beishong maybe looking for an opportunity towards the top side, but there's a Scuttle Crab in the river, and then there's a ward in the river as well. So honestly, I feel like the odds of him finding anything are limited at best. Beishong now been spotted out by a Hawk Shot as well. It feels like he is destined to just clear this jungle for now.
Yes, he is. The thing we can keep our eye on is the fact that since WE are the ones that have prio bot lane, they, theoretically should be the ones who can turn to a dragon first. But we actually see Beishong looking for an invade in the topside jungle.
Nah, he's not looking for an invade. He's looking for that gank. He just knows that the scuttle is in play. So up through the Tri-Brush. I think Flandre knows something's up here, but can he get away from anything? Knockup is there. Morgan's almost got a solo kill, but it's flash from Beishang to finish things off. Easy peasy. And first blood WE.
And Beishang just playing around both wards so well. They saw Renekton get the ward. You talked about the Scuttle Crab already. We saw the great use of the phase rush. And, you know, it doesn't mean too much that you're getting the gold on the Morgan, but it feels great that you're at least setting Flandre behind, especially when you are on this more early game-centric pick like the Renekton. But hey, Flandre actually is going to go for that Blade of the Rune King build. And
it feels like when you go back to the draft, WE almost forced Flandre to play the Renekton in some ways with the Quinn ban coming on out there. Well, it was like, come on, pick the Renekton. You know you want it.
It's not in some ways, right? Like, they felt completely fine going with this matchup. They definitely tried to push LNG in that way. And to WE, I'm sure it seemed like a win-win. We're like, hey, well, if you don't take the Renekton, we'll just go with it. We feel fine with it in every matchup. As you pointed out in Champ Select, that it does seem like it's Morgan's favorite pick. WE was a team who, if you weren't here in spring and even early on in summer, they were just first picking this champion on blue side. So WE does love the Renekton.
I'm not going to lie. When I watch WE and when I watch teams trying to deal with them in the draft, the champion pool that seems most limited is actually Morgan in the top lane. Like, we talked about, the Ornn and the Renekton are really the only two picks he plays. And whether or not that's a matter of he can't play other things, I doubt that is the case. But certainly he doesn't want to play other things.
Yeah, and it just goes back to the fact that we say WE knows their identity, they know their play style, they're just willing to take it every time. And hey, if teams aren't going to punish them for it, why not just keep going for it?
Yeah, makes sense. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what WE's saying. Hey, it got them 5th, 6th back in spring. And then they won the unofficial 5th place match against EDG as one of the first series of this entire split. So they're feeling pretty good with the way they play the game. And LNG have decided, now that we got level 7 on Maple, with level 6 on XX, we're going to try and force this dragon.
And they just used a lot of patience to get it right. We saw Iwandi and XX sitting in that pixel brush for pretty much the past minute and a half, just kind of using the vision control that they'd already gotten from their resets and saying, hey, walk into us, we'll either find a pick, and if you don't walk in, we'll just start this dragon outright. Does lead to the dragon, but I don't think it means too much for the side of WE.
And I'm looking across the compositions here, and you know, when I look down the lineup for LNG, this is actually a kind of WE-esque composition that they've actually got for themselves, aside from maybe the Tahm Kench in the bottom lane. Like, when you look at each of these champions, I mean, granted, Beishang is not typically a Volibear player, but aside from that,
at least the other three,
Ashe,
right?
The Twisted Fate, the Renekton, this is the kind of comp that flows with the wind that we know WE for. And it feels like they're really matching stylistic.
Yeah, and it goes to the fact that both comps have these similar windows to play around. It's just the fact that LNG obviously want a lot more, like they need the numbers advantage. They want the isolated picks because WE does have a lot more like AoE CC, AoE damage coming out from their side. Obviously the big knockup from the Galio ultimate, the multi-man taunt. So WE going to be a lot more favored in the straight-up 5v5s. LNG going to use their globals to get the 3v2 or the 3v1, something along those lines.
If they're going to be able to find it, that's the big question. Because I've got a feeling that, as you've seen, we're going to start things off slow here. But eventually, there's going to be an objective that everybody wants. It could be something like this Rift Herald, for example. And suddenly, we'll see teleports galore, we'll see global ultimates galore, and we'll have a massive fight on our hands. Yeah,
and we did see WE actually posture for the dragon once they realized that LNG were doing it. Obviously, just didn't get there in time. LNG backing off, and it looks like WE are going to use... Ooh,
that was a heal coming out. The Fate's Call going to be perfect from Jomung.
And Cleanse being instant as well. So, and they end up trading sides of the map right now. Beishang going to be able to just get this Rift Herald for free.
Oh, wow. We've got a Lantern coming through from Missing to make sure he's okay. That minion saved Light's life, but we're going to die. There's Iwandi gets underneath the tower, but he is tanking here. Thickskin going to keep him alive for now. Jomon gets under the tower, but still taken out anyway. XX wants to push forward, but in comes Teachama to save his support here. Lantern's there as well. And it is going to be a nice pickup, though, for LNG.
And I really like how they actually played out the map the past few minutes, because we set up that WE were going to be the ones looking for these plays on bot side, and LNG kind of baiting WE with the Herald vision, making them think, hey, we want the Herald, sending Beishang there, and then going and saying, hey, we're just going to make this play on the bottom half of the map, and getting a kill and getting some gold for Light is always great.
And I love it, because it's LNG have basically come into this series and said, hey, WE, you know that style that you always like to play? You know how you always play around Jomung and set him up? Well, we're going to play that style. And you can either match us, or you can just let us take these advantages.
Yeah, and we did see Teachama try to answer, but wasn't there in time. And it is the great thing about the TFL as compared to the Galio, right, is you have the proactivity to go anywhere you want at any time as compared to Galio, who obviously needs to ult to a teammate. So great job from Maple to set up that opportunity. Now he is picking up that Rod of Ages. So TF very much is a champion who has very expensive and important item spikes. So great for him to get that one pretty early on.
Yeah, he loves to build these expensive items, but also importantly, gets to get them a lot quicker than other champions because of the passive that he gets to gain extra gold. So it's one of those ones where he gets expensive items a little bit quicker than other people. I wonder has been found in the jungle here. He has his flash available, but he does not get to use it. And this is what we talked about. Out of nowhere, WE, everyone's here.
Right, and this was why we talked about them playing around bot side, because they do have the priority in the bot lane matchup. Great roam coming out from missing, and poor Iwanti didn't get to the edge of the wall fast enough to actually get off a good flash, and WE finding a pick, but not going to be able to turn it into any neutral objective.
No, unfortunately for them, Dragon not up for another minute, so they don't get too much out of the pick, but hey, at least they get slightly ahead on the kill score, so this is a small silver lining for them. But the gold's still a teeny-weeny bit in LNG's favor. They got the first Drake of the game, and they're going to be wanting to contest for this second one in 40 seconds.
The good thing for the side of LNG is that Beishang won't have his ultimate available for that fight, so you at least will have one thing you don't have to worry as much about. Everyone else on the side of WE will have their ultimates, and I always say this with these sort of compositions that are very AD carry reliant, and just in general, you always want to track AD carry's flash timers to where Jomung doesn't have his, so we'll be put under a bit more threat in these teamfights as compared to Light, who does have his flash.
It is worth mentioning as well, though, that with Jomung being on Kalista, it's one of those AD carries that the flash, obviously still incredibly important, but you have a little bit more leeway just because you can dance around the fight with that martial poise.
Also has the Lantern as well, so not unplayable, just going to feel a bit of pressure. And now both teams posturing for the Drake. Actually, Morgan doing what we know him for, just walking straight from top, saying it doesn't matter if Flandre gets this wave, gets some plate gold. I want to be here for the team fight first.
Yeah, they are moving straight down. As you rightly mentioned, Morgan with no TP, so he has to walk. And you can see Flandre recoil, and he's shoved the wave in, and he's in base ready to TP. This Dragon's going to go down before the fight actually kicks off. No, XX comes in and steals it. Gets stuns down onto Beishang, who gets a Lantern out to safety. In comes Teachama. But there's two stuck at the back of the pit here. Flandre dashes away from the knockup out of Morgan, who's taking a whole brunt of damage. Teachama wants to get into the fight for a taunt, but WE have to back away.
And I'm actually glad he did go in for the taunt, because we've set up that WE's comp is actually very ult-reliant, so Call of the Forge God misses. Teachama's ult doesn't really keep anyone down. Doesn't feel like that was a fight that W really would have wanted, especially with Beishang being low at the time.
And you mentioned WE's comp being ult-reliant. It's very similar for LNG as well, so WE now find themselves with priority in the bot lane with the Rift Herald. They grab themselves at least a consolation prize.
Yep, so going to get a bit of gold, probably going to push out this wave and then look for resets. We do see Maple and XX waiting in the wings just in case any shenanigans happen, but hey, Flandre's actually gotten a bunch of gold all around the map for these plays. Just picked up a wave and a plate in mid. Obviously got a free wave in topside from Morgan leaving first. Not that he got a free wave, but Morgan missed a wave.
So there's a minuscule CS lead for him. The most significant CS lead is both in the bottom lane in favor of Light, because obviously, in case you guys aren't familiar, Ashe has a really good matchup into Kalista, just because Kalista's so reliant on movement speed to get those jumps off, and Ashe, by default, slows that movement speed down. But also, XX in the jungle getting over a 20 CS lead now.
Yeah, and we even see on the gold chart, Maple is the one topping, and it does go down, like you said, with that passive that Twisted Fate does have. Game's still really even. Both teams pretty much making play for play on both sides of the map so far. LNG, with the fact that XX was able to get that Dragon, is massive because now they are threatening that 4 Drake stack really early on.
But hey, one nice thing that I'm sure you'll be very happy about, Lyric, is we got a Blade of the Rune King on a Renekton up in the top lane.
Yeah, and I always love seeing this. Again, it makes his isolated 1v1 much stronger. I actually don't feel like you lose out on a lot of team fight prowess from building it either. I feel like that's a bit overblown. We do always see Renektons go for Black Cleaver second anyway, so they're still going to get that cooldown that Renekton loves. They're still going to get the tankiness that he also needs. And it's going to do much better against Morgan. Morgan also itemizing in return, getting that Bramble Vest.
Yeah, so itemizing for the lane here is doesn't want Renekton to be able to have that sustained. Turret plates have fallen though, so we are going to see now a little bit of an increase in game pace. When fights are taken, when kills are taken, these turrets are going to fall much more easily.
And we keep seeing WE set up for these picks in River where we can see Teacher Mouse constantly hovering towards the bottom side river, Jomung and Missing just constantly clearing out, walking up with Beishang, kind of hoping they can catch out XX or, you know, anyone who's just very shallowly in their jungle. Ooh, like this.
Yeah, XX. He knows what's up, though, because Teacher Mouse here, and he realizes he can't take this fight. Jomung, oh, ooh, that was close. Missing nearly got the hook onto Light. Obviously, with Iwandi there, Light's relatively safe anyway, but still get excited when I see a Death Sentence lyric. FLICKR going for a 1v1, but he is not winning this.
I mean, that was just great. We saw Morgan hit absolutely everything, taking a really nice short trade to where obviously Renekton would much prefer to go with the extended trains in this matchup. He has to blade the Rune King, he has the Conqueror. Morgan just playing it extremely well mechanically, and we actually see Teacher Mouse going for a bot lane dive. Remember, Maple does have the Destiny, so he could follow up extremely easily, and it could potentially backfire for WE, but no. Teacher Mouse just using his presence to guarantee a turret.
LNG just going to accept this one. The turret was already incredibly low as well, so I think just accepting that this was going down no matter what. No need to potentially lose lives, especially with Dragon coming up in just over a minute.
But more importantly right now is I wonder if WE are just going to go straight for the Herald. Obviously their bot lane could just walk straight up now. We're going to need to pay attention to Iwandi as well because we've already pointed out that Abyssal Voyage will always be easy for pretty much either team to follow the other one if they want to start the objective first.
See, Light and Iwandi are recalling right now. Try and get that Blade of the Rune King before moving into a potential play, but I think they're going to be a little bit late on this one. XX is moving, though. As you rightly mentioned, the Abyssal Voyage can be a game changer, but I think it's going to be too little too late from LNG.
I actually think this is fine. We've already talked about how they don't really want to go toe-to-toe with WE. It is more about getting somewhere first. As we can see, they're just going to commit to the Dragon, which is up in 30 seconds, get Vision down first, try to catch someone off of WE if they're going to walk in, or maybe even set up some kind of flank for FLICKR. He does, actually doesn't have TP, so could be kind of risky. Morgan's pushing out the wave. I think FLICKR should just walk straight to Dragon. And he is. Cool.
FLICKR is going to move straight over towards that Drake that you're talking about. And in 15 seconds, it'll be Ocean Drake. Importantly, Ocean sold this game. And this would be soul point for LNG, which WE really can't afford to give over.
Morgan does have TP. Doesn't look like there's any great wards. I would expect him just to TP
he's
into the
going straight to mid lane there. He's already used it, and he's moving straight over. WE got to make this one happen. Teacher Mouse off to the back here. They're going to spot the Drake out. It's down on 2,000 HP. In goes Beishang, and he gets himself the steal. There's a Lantern if he needs it as well. As Teacher Mouse jumps into the fight, but XX has gone out of the back door, and now FLICKR jumps in as they start this one off for themselves. It's Beishang on the back line. He's got the Haymaker. No, it's on cooldown, so he goes down. FLICKR might have to answer with his own life, but Iwandi saves the croc, and now they're straight onto Jomung in the back line. XX found his way into the fight, and this is looking great for LNG as they chase WE out of the pit, and we're looking at a triple kill here for Light.
And that was just great from LNG overall, the patience on that play. They actually are the ones who started off. We see Beishang try to answer by ulting in. It's left by himself. No other member of WE is able to follow up. He gets bursted out, so it's immediately a 5v4. But the most beautiful part of that play for me was XX, just the perfect time to flash over the wall and pick off Jomung like you talked about.
Really beautifully done from XX, and that's the second Dragon fight where this time around he didn't get the Dragon for himself, but last time made a flashy play to get into the pit at the last possible second and make something happen for his team. This time around does the same just for a kill.
Yeah, and we can see it here. Teacher Mouse on the other side, and Beishang going to flash in, try to secure this Dragon. He does in the end. We see a hook by Missing, but not able to actually follow up on anything. Surprised Morgan doesn't just open Call of the Forge God here, but FLICKR flashes in. And this is what I talked about, where Beishang ults in, is left by himself. FLICKR kind of a zoning element for the rest of the members of WE. Keep your eyes on XX here. Right there, beautiful flash right onto Jomung. And from here, it's very easy for LNG to finish off this fight.
Jomung had his flash available as well, but couldn't get it off in time, and it means that XX, the LNG, do get this fight. 3 kills onto Light as well. That is the ideal target here for LNG.
And really, there was just even nowhere good for Jomung to flash. There's a bear on the other side of the pit, so you can't go there. The rest of LNG is surrounding you, so no good options. But like you said, even like ignoring compositionally, Light does typically tend to be the big late game carry that LNG plays around, especially, of course, when he got on Champions League Aphelios for sure, but they really seem to value his team fight positioning and do their best to feel for him to set him up.
One thing I'm just excited for here, Lyric, is the fact that we're seeing LNG be proactive. Like, if there's one criticism I can give for LNG, it's that they are not proactive often. We call them the scavengers of the league because they're not usually the ones putting their foot down. In this game, they are making things happen around this dragon. WE have an answer, though, as they drop this Herald in the mid lane. Found one tower for themselves, and they're looking to force the second one as well. Demolish might just be enough to finish this one off. Morgan able to proc that. In the meantime, we've got side lane pressure on both sides of the map here from LNG.
Yeah, and I mean, LNG realizing we already talked about the 1-3-1 in champ select and just going to go this full straight route. I'm kind of surprised WE didn't try to open the Call of the Forge God when they were going for that second tier turret mid lane and try to get off more. And ultimately, the trade's going to be evened on both sides of the map.
Yeah, and Maple's going to be able to get out with the Destiny as well. Actually, the Destiny went on cooldown, so he's sticking around here. I think LNG want to fight as Maple moves in. Teachama matching Flandre, but he's got his Grand Entrance available, so he'd be able to make his way over towards a play.
And it's nice to see because we don't have too many LPL teams that play like a 1-3-1 style. And even when they try, we never see teams commit to it, and they do always give in to the urge of like, okay, well, this split we do have, this season we do have, you know, soul point and things of this nature, so they always give into that big 5v5 team fight. Nice job by LNG not to get baited in, and they ended up with a huge gold swing as well. They also ended up with a huge XP advantage because both Flandre and Maple were soaking free waves to where WE were just sharing mid as 5.
Which, I mean, let's be honest, is not that uncommon for WE to forfeit waves to make plays elsewhere on the map. That is something that we have seen time and time again from this team. And honestly, if there's one thing that you could say about WE is they don't really respect the value of minions.
Which feels like the first tip that a lot of Challenger players give when they make those like how to get Challenger videos is, hey guys, you really need to put a value on CSing and minion gold and minion XP, and WE's just like, nope, not us, boss.
WE just throws that expectation out of the window, and they really don't care about minion waves. They just want to make plays. And you know what? I could get behind that. As a viewer, this is why I love watching WE, because that's how they like to make the game happen. 25 seconds, though, until the next big play, because Ocean Drake is going to be spawning once more.
Yep, and so WE have full vision control, but we need to remember that, especially when you have TF, but even Ashe, it's not that dire to not have vision control of the objective. Maple's Destiny is going to be up very soon, and they're going to know where all the members of WE are. He also has Zanya, so can play a sort of pseudo-initiation role. The throwback to the Messiah days.
We'll see if Maple's going to go for that kind of play. I wouldn't be too surprised if that bot wave continues to push if he makes some kind of play elsewhere, but here we go, Destiny, and the fight is going to kick off as Flandre gets in. They're getting on towards Teachama, though, trying to single him out outside of the fray, but Dragon now taken by Jomung. Obviously is on the Callista. Teachama got out of the skirmish on the side, and WE are looking pretty good, but Flandre getting into the middle of everyone. Jomung just dancing around, stacking up these Rens. Might just be able to cut people down, but he's chased by Flandre, gets over the wall. The Ren never comes through, though, and it's Light that's the one popping off. It's Light getting kills here as Iwandi licks Morgan in the face and takes him down. There's no way out of this one, Jomung. Or maybe there is. Zonyas comes on through. QE might finish him off, though, as Jomung just life-stealing off the wave here. It's not going to be enough. Maple gets the kill. That's an ace!
And this is going to lead to LNG taking Baron, I'm sorry, but that fight was honestly so confusing. We saw it go in a bunch of different directions. I saw Light get CC'd very early on, but WE not able to follow up on it. Was able to reposition with Iwandi. Jomung ending up in some weird position, and it getting us to this point where with LNG taking Baron, we've already seen what they can do with that 1-3-1 comp of Maple on one side, late Flandre in the other, just spreading WE thin, and now we're going to see that in full force.
And if this is the new version of LNG, then I am down to watch more LNG, because this is what I wanted to see out of this team. Proactivity and being able to execute in these fights. I thought it was all going wrong for them when they focused on Teachama, but they make it happen.
Yeah, we see Beishong ult away XX, so he isn't able to get the dragon. Here's what looks bad for me, because we saw Light get knocked up. No one was able to follow in on him. Here does get saved by Iwandi. I was actually following Jomung at this moment, but we do see all the members of LNG just stacked onto each other, able to kite out the rest of WE very well, because if Jomung's not in that fight, they actually don't really have a great source of damage.
Yeah, and like, look, it was a good attempt by Jomung. He tries to get onto Light, but Flandre completely thwarted him, just follows him over the wall, forces Jomung away from Light. And as you rightly say, with Jomung not in the picture, there isn't any damage to finish off the AD carry, so Light just gets to free fire for the rest of the skirmish. And one thing we always say about Jomung is that, you know, when WE can't set him up for success, he struggles. Right now, he's struggling on the scoreboard. 1-3-1, but yet another fight going to be coming our way as Missing tanks the arrow. Teach are flying into the fray as well. XX might have gone a little too deep, but he's always got Iwandi there to pull him out of the fray, and FLICKR gets straight onto Jomung once more. Another double kill for Light, and this is looking all LNG right now. Morgan gets out of that one with a lantern, but another fight and another win for LNG.
And I honestly feel like WE made the right move. They just left FLICKR topside, said, okay, we need to get back in this game. We need to engage 5v4 in mid. They weren't able to find a good way to engage. It was actually LNG's counter-engage that ended up even getting XX low. But still, LNG just going to profit so much off this. And yeah, now WE going to have to wait out, you know, another few minutes for their massive cooldowns to come back up, and LNG just going to be in a position to keep pressuring with all of these Baron buffed minions.
And let's just revisit win conditions here for WE, because it's not like they win on scaling. They've got a Kalista. Kalista is not about to come online in the next item. Kalista is at her strongest probably of the entire game, so
exactly.
It doesn't get any better here.
No, and both compositions, we've said this many times throughout the game, so I'm sorry fans are getting a bit annoyed, but both compositions having very similar like windows when they're strong, very similar ways to play out the game. It was just kept coming down to us saying, okay, LNG wanting to play with tempo, play with picks, WE wanting to play these straight up 5v5s, but we actually never even saw WE really execute these 5v5s well. We never saw some big Galio ultimate come in, knock up numerous members into a taunt, leaving Jomung to dish out this damage. Even Beishang on the set has looked really uncomfortable, which was something you brought up in Champ Select. It's not a champion we've really seen him on.
I mean, when we think of Beishang, he's usually one of the carries for the team. He's usually one of the big damage dealers. Set, you know, he's going to be tanky, and the Haymaker can be a big damage dealer.
Especially in the early game, right?
Right.
Yep. In the early game, you have the damage available. Same with Galio, but obviously once we get to the late game, it would be all Kalista. But I guess to be fair, when they drafted this comp, they weren't thinking about late game damage, right? It was all about the early and mid game team fights for them.
And I'm impressed by LNG, the fact that they are matching WE in early and mid-game aggression, the two signatures of what we know WE for. And we've been criticizing LNG, asking what the identity is for this team. Maybe they've just borrowed it from WE. Maybe they're just going to take this one instead.
And the thing I like, too, is the adaptation of having a Iwandi on Tahm Kench, because we've always talked about Iwandi as more of a, you know, protection and enchanter support, especially for those of you who haven't watched a lot of LNG games. He is a Janna main, so...
or at least used to be.
In solo queue, he still is, actually.
Oh, really?
Thresh doesn't lead to anything, so Tahm Kench still does index into that style of play of, you know, just peeling for your AD carry and always being that force right next to Light. Is still a tankier champion, neutralizes a lot of lanes, like we saw. You know, WE's bot lane not able to find any 2v2 kills or really even any dives. Sure, they did lose turret early, but was ultimately because of the Rift Herald play mostly.
And, well, with the massive gold lead that LNG have for themselves now, they're going to be able to just grab this dragon with no contest whatsoever. FLICKR would love for someone to come and try and get this wave. He's waiting off to the side, and Morgan might just fall for the trap here.
And that's the thing about LNG's comp, is even though we did say 1-3-1, TF and Renekton aren't really the types of champions who can realistically safely go up and hit those inhibitor turrets, so it is going to be a lot more about pushing waves in and trying to find ways to get a pick onto WE's comp and then translate that probably into another Baron, but knowing WE's style that they're all going to funnel into the pick and just, you know, multiple members go down, then LNG can try to break down an inhibitor.
And, like, it does go back to the way that you're meant to play global ultimate compositions like this, where you do want to push in that wave, and hopefully somebody's over-pushed in the mid lane, or hopefully there's a dragon coming up and you can manipulate the map so that you can find picks, so that you can force opportunities. And it's about trying to find a situation where WE have two bad decisions to make, and they just have to take the lesser of the evil.
Exactly. It is very much a kind of sense of juggling. And for WE right now, it really is all about forcing that, you know, let's say 5v4 and pick someone off before a FLICKR TP can bring him into the fight. The sad thing is we haven't seen them able to execute that, especially because of the Tahm Kench pick, to where Missing will hit a great hook. Iwandi's right there, devour someone, and guess what? Now you don't have a great way of going in. Beishang will try to ult in and bring in Teachima, but then Jomung isn't in a position to deal great damage. So feels like he's going to need to find a pick when Iwandi's not around. But
yeah,
that's not very realistic.
Especially with Abyssal Voyage in play. Like, Iwandi's always going to be there. Also, where else would I want to even be on the map, right? Like, as Tom Kench support, where else are you going to be except the objective?
Exactly, and the only other play that comes to mind is sure you could send Teachermon Morgan to pick off Flandre, but Galio and Ornn doesn't really seem like it has the damage to pick off Flandre.
Beisheng went real deep to try and get onto Maple there. But it's not going to happen. There's a nice little hook onto Flandre, but ultimately they get chased down right now. WE trying to force something, just trying to make a desperation play by the looks of things. They get away with their lives. It costs a couple of flashes, though.
And let's remember that LNG are 8,000 gold ahead. So even if WE found the perfect engage at this point, it's still looking pretty dire.
Yeah, they need some kind of miracle. Baron stealing could be one of those types of miracles here. Maple doesn't have Destiny, so Vision not going to be there. Beisheng? Yeah, I don't know about that one. Tries to get in. Oh, there's a Lantern. Beisheng gets out with his life. At very least, Teachermon now looking for the knock-up, and XX is incredibly low, but he ults out with his own life. I mean, it was damn close to the miracle they needed, but not close enough.
I liked what Beisheng was going for, and like you said, great Lantern from Missing to get him out of there. Teachermon almost finding the ult that you would need for the side of WE to, you know, keep members of LNG locked down long enough for Jomung to dish out all that damage, but still, LNG able to get away. And it's like, hey, they weren't able to get the Baron yet, but Dragon's up in 1 minute and 40 seconds, and it really just feels like it's a matter of time.
And that was every ult used as well during all of that. So WE now can't actually do anything about the Baron that's being restarted once more.
Also, LNG didn't have pretty much any ults available when they were doing that last Baron. Now they do have Enchanted Crystal Arrow to turn onto WE if they come in too far.
And Destiny to chase people down. Destiny used right at the very start of this fight just for Vision to make sure they can keep Beisheng away from the play. Baron on 2,000, and XX will easily be able to secure that one for his team. Now they're getting into the pit. Teachermon wants a taunt onto everyone. Will get the 3-man taunt. Maple's on the backside. Beisheng managed to find one onto Flandre, but Flandre's not the target. Light gobbled up by I1D. Will get shut down by Morgan, but one kill just ain't enough.
And this could probably just lead to LNG just going and picking up an inhibitor, but XX and I1D just want the kill.
Yeah. I mean, I think Maple could probably get the inhib by himself anyway. This 30-second death time is here. Missing. He's going to be sad about this one. There's one last kill from the fight coming through.
Has the wave, has the Baron, so definitely going to secure the inhibitor for himself. And now with Dragon coming up in 30 seconds, we're going to see XX and I1D get these recalls off, start setting up some vision. And this should be a pretty easy Dragon for LNG. Yeah,
I mean, I'm feeling like this is a little bit of a foregone conclusion now on this game, because with this Soul going their way, Missing still on a 20-second death timer here, LNG have pretty much got this one in the bag. I like that WE at least make the play, right? They're not going to keel over. At least they force the fight and try and make it happen.
And we see Oh, actually, we're going to look at Light. I was going to say, because we see Jomung actually flash over the wall to try to get with the rest of his team. Just ends up going down to Light's damage. Pretty much just flashing into him. And great play from Light in that team fight overall. And 9-1-5 on the Ashe is the performance he needs for LNG to win some games.
Oh yeah, that is definitely the case. Control Ward in the pit here, but Flandre spotted it out. Beisheng's already in. Dragon's still at 2,000 HP, so I don't know if he can get this spike. The answer's no. With an Ocean Soul and with 2 kills, I think that's the final nail in the coffin, Lyric.
Let's be honest, WE needed to make that play. They needed to hope for a miracle. They went for it, but ultimately, with 40-second death timers, LNG are just going to push down mid and take the Nexus.
That's going to be game number 1 here for LNG with a surprising victory. Nobody would have been coming into this calling LNG the favorite, but they have beaten WE. And not only that, they've beaten them in their own style. LNG have come in, built this global composition, and now they're looking to try and close this one out. Morgan going to be attempting to defend here. Stun onto Jomung, but he gets back onto the fountain. But you know what? LNG were just buying space. They're onto the Nexus Towers. They're going to take game number 1 as Missing does everything that he can. Fate Skull to keep the support alive. Ren stacking up here. LNG could just focus the Nexus, but they want this one last fight. There we go. Win finally comes through, and LNG 1-0 up.
And the most interesting thing for me is still that Tom Kench pick, because even in spring, when like NALCS and some LEC teams were playing it, LPL, we were never big on this pick. Even with things like Thresh being in